Welcome back to Carry On Sailing. This episode we're going to cover more technical aspects again, like we did last episode, but this time we're going to cover things outside. Thank you very much for all your comments. They've been extremely helpful in letting me know which direction you would like to take the episodes. So please, if you want me to cover something, just make a comment in the comment section below. And of course, as always, please send me your bank account details. Now, joking, just click like and subscribe. Thanks. Another little hack or mod, let's say, which I find really useful, is attaching the freshwater hose to a 5 micron filter. Any less than 5 micron, it'll drop the pressure too much. So I've got a 5 micron filter inside here, and you can see the filter. She could probably do with a little bit of a clean, but it's just most of the sediment and sand that doesn't end up in your tanks. It's a lot easier to get it out of this filter than it is of your tanks, and you can just simply get a quick release connector and then make sure you get the in and the out in the correct direction, and then just add and so that adds a layer of filtration to your drinking water or the shower water. Some people take it a step further and they de-harden the water before it even comes in. Now I have to say that's not a bad idea, because it helps with cleaning, let's put it that way. So for example, if you were washing the windows, there's no scale, there's no calcium in the water. So when you wash the windows, once they're washed, you don't need to dry them. So little hints and tips. I think it's probably a little bit overkill. We have another solution which I mentioned in some of my live streams for drinking water. We HEPA filter the drinking water. So everywhere we've been, we use this method, and we're still breathing, right? Glass of wine spilled on normal teak is not pleasant to try and fix. Whereas with the synthetic teak, you can power hose things within reason. You can even sand it down if you want to bring it back like new, and you can use acid to make it better. But anyway, as you can see on Carry On, we have the synthetic teak decking, and there was a British team that did this for me, and they drove all the way over to France and La Rochelle, where the boat was built, to do this, and I can recommend them. The quality of the work's been excellent. So if you are going to do it, I suggest you do it in a light color. This one's 4 different darker shades of brown, with the kind of silver caulking, just because the interior is silver, so it's a little bit more futuristic, and it looks great. But if I was to do it again, and I was on a bit more of a tighter budget, I'd probably spend the money on something like lithium batteries instead. And if you felt like it, you could add the teak decking at a later stage. One of the optional extras, I think, which is a great idea, but this could be done differently, and you could do it yourself. But what you're going to need to do is get the fridge hooked up and the water hooked up so that you can do your own idea or whatever you want to do. But this little kitchenette, it has a fridge in it, drinks fridge, which you use for drinks fridge, and you could probably put an ice maker in something similar, or a freezer. Now, additional freezer space is something you always want on a transoceanic boat or blue water boat, because it means that you can have meals prepped beforehand, or you can just have everything ready to go, because cooking in big seas is not as attractive as it sounds. This is a little bit of a tricky one, and I hope you can see it clearly with the camera, but this space is underutilized, I think, underneath. So this is where your feet would be in the helm, and the helm is covered here at the moment. But this space, you could probably set it up quite nicely with sets of drawers. They're probably not going to be that safe from the weather, but it's not a bad place, I think, to put some extra storage. So this is one of my own modifications. This is a teak lacquer table, and we normally have this covered just to protect the lacquer, but it's reused teak, so it's refashioned teak. And what you'll notice also, if you've got a sharp eye, is the life raft is down here. It doesn't really get in the way at all here, but the original place for it is in the portside lazarette, and this is a 10-man life raft, and with just myself and Eva and the dog on board, if we had an emergency, it would add to another layer of problems for us if we were trying to deploy it. So I decided, particularly for offshore sailing, this is a much better location for the very heavy 10-man life raft. And just a quick reminder, what I would do again, I would probably get 2 6-man or 1 6 and a 4-man life raft, so that they're easier to handle and you have better chance of them inflating. Now, you may remember I talked about in other episodes about the Portland Pudgy. Well, in short, I haven't been very impressed with it. It arrived, and since it's arrived, we've had nothing but irritation and problems with it, but I'm going to come back to that in a different episode. So I've added this cockpit tent, and this is an optional extra from the factory. I think you can do various different things with them. You can have half mosquito net, half tent, but this adds an extra layer of cover, obviously, from the weather. But what it also does is it closes off this space, so you can, in very foul weather for long periods of time, like for example sailing in Europe in the winter, you can block off this entire region and have the doors open, so you get even more cockpit slash saloon. In fact, it's called the cockloon space when these doors are all open. Quite impressive. If Eva looks around, we'll be able to show you that these sliding doors will open completely and join the saloon with the cockpit area. So welcome, this is a skipper cabin. I made some slight modifications. Mine's hull number 9, and so at the time the thinking was that this would be a skipper cabin slash laundry. Well, I decided to get a washer dryer and put that in the tech room like you've seen in the last episode, and that freed up all of this space to be 100% skipper cabin. So you've got a single berth. Now, forgive me, obviously we use this boat on a daily basis. So we've got a single berth here, and I've installed an electric fan. We've got a small port light, and I'm just going to take the camera off Eva, and you can see that my dive compressor is here, L&W, great piece of kit. Keep my dive cylinders down here for now, all my bits and pieces. Fishing rods, yes, very messy. Internet's going to give me hell for this one. But what's great is that this has its own little sink here, so you can brush your teeth as a skipper, and it's acceptable, I think, for, you know, maybe a week coastal sailing, maybe a little bit more depending on how your appetite is for living in this kind of close quarters. I think it's pretty good. What I would say about it is it's not air conditioned, so you're going to need to use that fan. What's really impressive, I think, is that hidden away, so you've got your own head. One of the things I definitely think you should add if you have an option on any boat is the remote control of your windlass, and therefore you can drop your anchor or lift your anchor from the helm, and also it gives you a chain counter, so you actually can see how much chain you've let out or how much you have left to lift. So that means that if you're single-handed, it becomes easier, or it becomes easier if you have, you know, totally useless crew like I have always. It's a hot one, and it's a nice day for sitting in the aircon. But anyway, we have a bow thruster control here. Obviously that controls the bow thruster, and in an ideal world you would have a bow thruster on every boat, but you don't, and they can be expensive, plus they're also another thing to maintain and another thing that can fail. So if you rely on them, it's that moment that you rely on it that it's going to fail. Some people, I know, I've heard that somebody's put a stern thruster on this too. Of course, the more things you have changing the waterline, the more things it's going to affect performance. So you want to think long and hard about whether or not you need to add either, but I definitely think it's a good idea to have a bow thruster on this vessel. This little light, really handy. Solar powered light, don't need to do any extra wiring. Switches on here, you can charge from it too. So you can see my little solar array on the light is catching the sun nicely, and it's just a really nice amount of light here to light the winches and the jammers, especially if I'm trying to teach somebody new how to put in a reef or set the sails properly. Handy piece of kit. Although it's not a matching colour, I think adding a different switch here has been quite useful, because you can activate this walking past. So a fully covered switch is quite useful here, and it also protects the plastic from the sun. This is actually a windlass switch from Lumar, and it's not the same make as these ones, are not the same color obviously, but it requires a little bit more effort to activate it, whereas this one you could inadvertently activate it. And also, as you can see from this one, I've actually replaced the rubber itself. So as time comes around, I'll actually probably end up changing them all to be the same. This is quite a good spot for sailing underway, and you get the apparent wind in your face, but it's also a great storage spot for the Passerelle. And Passerelle on almost all boats is a bit of a pain, and where to store it. And you can see it's not really here. You can quite easily store a kayak and all sorts of bits and pieces. In fact, you could store the life raft up here if you felt like it. But the problem is if you were really silly and you inverted the boat, then it might not be such a good place to put the life raft. But anyway, where you store a Passerelle is a problem. And Passerelles themselves are very expensive. So I suggest, if I was going to do it again, probably just get your average aluminium ladder and turn it upside down, put a bit of wood on it, and Bob's your uncle, you've got a Passerelle. So you can see a lot of things don't survive the marine environment, and this one is obviously not designed for the UV and being subjected to the sea, but we're just going to recondition it. But this one has actually survived, and this was an Amazon, just a cheap Amazon light for the driveway, and you can buy it in different colours. This one's red, obviously, to save your night vision, and it survived very well. And on the Trimaran, if I put that there, it won't move around. So useful piece of kit, because I could like to keep an eye on the dog. The dog stays here, she sleeps here when we're underway, just so she can get the wind through her hair like myself. Another mod, I've added a new sail bag. And the original one was after the UV and all the wind, it was in pieces. So this is pretty much a brand new sail bag. We've added this extra third layer for chafe protection from the main halyard, and this is Sunbrella material, and there's an internal layer here which you can see, and we've added Velcro all along, and we've made the bag slightly bigger so it's just easier for the whole for the mainsail just to fall into the bag. And then also what we've added to cover everything else, this is a separate cover on the forward aspect of the bag, just to cover the sail itself and all the running cars. So all the running cars you can see are inside. As you can see, all my running rigging is Dyneema and Spectra, and that's pretty expensive stuff, because if you think, it's got to go from the cockpit all the way up the mast and right back down again, or along the boom and right back down again. So yeah, it's an expensive exercise if you have to replace it. And what we do sometimes is we just move it along after, you know, a lot of big passages, or just move it along a few centimeters so it doesn't chafe, and just check up on that. Saves you some money. And what you can do is you can put chafe guards on it too. One that we have noticed does chafe a little bit is the topping lift, because it's under a lot of strain lifting that dinghy. So this is a modification that I've done, and although this is a self-tacking jib, when I want, I can open these jammers. I've simply, the normal self-tacking jib would do its own thing and tack away whenever the wind direction changes. But these stoppers, I don't particularly like them, and I've re-welded them, and the problems happened twice. So I don't think it's a very good design. So I changed it, and I added this Dyneema to the runner. And what that's meant is that with the jammer that I've added on both sides, that means I can control very accurately for the point of sail I'm on, where the jib is actually positioned. You may notice I'm walking on top of the solar panels here, and this is designed to be walked on. This is the Soliban, and this is the Sunwear Solar. Both I think are polycrystalline. This might be a monocrystalline, the Soliban, I think, which is a higher quality. But the Sunwear is just as good. In fact, I think probably for your money, this solar is probably better if you have the space. However, the question is, do you really need to walk on your solar panels at all? Because if you don't, you can get cheaper glass solar, and also you can raise them. And having them raised means that they can be ventilated, and then they become more efficient. So not only are they cheaper, they're also ventilated and more efficient if they're raised. So Eva is standing on the top deck by the sun deck, which obviously it's outrageously hot here. That's why I'm wearing the silly hat. But you can see, if just a quick run from the helm, you would be able to see the anchor if you had a problem and what was stuck in it. Quite a useful thing to be able to do on a large boat with the remote. So I think that's quite a good design feature. But anyway, I'd like to show you some of the things that I've done with my ground tackle. So this is standard on the main boat. This is a Lofrans windlass. And a lot of people, I'm not sure if you're aware of how these work, but basically there's just a remote inside here, and you have to have the engine switched on. It's really important that you have the engine switched on. These just love power. They need a lot of energy to run them. So you have to run the engine first, and then you can use your remote. That's for lifting the anchor, but you can also use them. This is slightly raised. You'll see this section of the windlass, and that is basically so you can help with mooring lines. You can loosen off the clutch a little bit by going anti-clockwise, put your lines around and use the remote to pull you closer to the dock. So quite a useful hack there. So one of the other things I've added that's different from stock is this Rockner Vulcan anchor. Absolutely great piece of kit, undebatably good. I absolutely love it. And if I was to buy another boat, I'd just put the exact same brand. And it's important that you go to the sizing chart on their website, because they size up the anchor specific to the length and the type of boat you have. So just follow that and you'll get a great anchor in my view. The second thing I've done is from a separate company, I've taken an anchor swivel. And this is from a company called Mantis, who also do anchors, but I've taken the anchor swivel. I've done a slight modification in their design, and I've added this pin and bent it round. And I've also taken Mantis's anchor. This is their anchor hook, and yeah, this basically the idea is it hooks on to the chain, and I use this whole system as my snubber with my pieces of nylon that go to each cleat. You can see there's one for each cleat, and then I attach it like this. Once the chain's all out, I attach it something like that, and it takes the stress of the whole boat on the two pieces of nylon. And you don't want to over spec your nylon. If you have it too thick, it won't stretch, and if it's old also, it won't stretch. So what you want to do is have the adequate size nylon, and that's what I have. This boat's about 16 tons, and so you can see that diameter of nylon is adequate. And what happens is when the wind or the gusts hit the boat, it'll stretch and take some of the snatch and grab out of sitting at anchor. So if somebody's got a sharp eye, you might notice this little piece of kit here, and this is basically that I can put my continuous line for my furling system and for my spinnaker, which sits over here. And yeah, it's just useful because what happens is I run the continuous line and it follows the jib and the Genoa furling lines across the length of the boat back to the cockpit. These sunshades are a great idea if you're going to be stationary for any sense of time, even at anchor or in port. But one thing I would say about them is, if you can follow me, you want to make sure that these fastenings are a good strong way of staying on, keeping them on if there's going to be high winds, which these are. But also, if I remove this one, you can see this is a little bull point, and on the side decks, walking past a sharp thing like that while in a bad sea can cut your foot. So Velcro would probably be an adequate job, and just running Velcro along here, or whatever you choose, but zipper or a zip might do just as well. So one of the things that I've added is a little preamp, so that it can handle extra speakers inside, but these are waterproof speakers, and they're from Fusion as well. Great, do the job. It means that you can sit up here, and if it's not crazy hot or crazy cold underway, listening to music. It's a big boat, so you can't actually hear the music on the aft section in the cockpit either. Yeah, you need another set of speakers to hear everything on the foredeck. I've added this cleat, and it's really just necessary for attaching large round buoys, the balloon type buoy. The problem is having it, people might think that it's for mooring lines, which I have added backing to the cleat, but it's really just to make sure that the mooring lines are the mooring buoys, sorry, is as far forward as possible. This is a snatch block. It's very useful. I use it as a barber hauler for the Genoa sheet, and don't really use it that much apart from when we're going dead downwind, which you try to avoid on a slippery multi-hull, because you're better off to add miles and turn up into the wind generally. But we do use this one for our onboard jib, which is we just essentially add a pulley to the boom and then use a water or a jerry can and use that. 1 litre is 1 kilo. And then if I want to switch round the direction of the pulleys or the line, I just add this to this little place over here that Eva's sitting at. And now I can run the line from down a ways up. One of the best modifications we have on board is this lady sitting over my shoulder, and she does a good job at security. She also does a very good job of leaving hair in the bilge, but it's worth it in my view. She's a great companion and also great at security. It's not as bad as you think actually crossing borders with an animal on board, but it's different for every country. So you just have to look about what the requirements are before you cross that border. I'm going to try and be quick. It's very hot up here. That's why I'm wearing this silly hat. This is a preventer, so I have it stowed away there, and it's all Dyneema. You can see, she's on a ceramic ring. And what I do is we drop that over depending on which tack we're on, and then we tie a line round here with a bowline, and we tie that to the stern cleat, and then put a bit of tension on it. What that does is that stops the boom just slamming over. In very big swell, the boat could be swung around so much that the wind is on the other side. So that's basically your preventer that we use. Great piece of kit, Dyneema, never had a problem, not even a tiny little bit of chafe. It goes right where the main sheet blocks are. So I mentioned the company that do the hatches. They also do these stanchion poles. Their name is Goyo, and I'm really not a big fan at all. But you can see this is the reason why I don't like them. This is basically just a piece of aluminium pole, and it's drilled through. It did have a little rubber bung on it, but the rubber bung didn't last very long. So what happens if Eva comes close, I can show you, the lifelines get chafed and cut through this little cut here is not smooth and cuts through the lifelines. So rather than change the stanchion itself a lot, I've basically taken this aluminium or steel garden fencing covered in plastic, and that's done the job for now. But if I was going to do it all again, I'd put my own stanchions on, and I've seen ones that are nice and smooth. They have nice and smooth runs through them, where somebody has actually thought about that rather than just profit. Another one I've got, this is a smart plug, it's called. You basically have to buy the male and female aspect of them, but it's great, so you don't get an incomplete connection between the shore power and your boat. This can be quite a dangerous place to start a fire if you have an incomplete connection. So the marine plugs that you can normally buy and see around, they connect and then rotate. Not a good idea in my view. These have these two clips which hold and get a tight grip on the male or the female part of the plug. A singularly most important modification that I think I've done to this boat is I've added these pulley blocks either side for the dinghy, and what that means is we have another point of contact to stop the dinghy swinging. And then I've added these jammers here. Can you see these jammers? And they stop the boat from the dinghy from swinging in a big sea, because we're using the topping lift to raise the dinghy. But if you're single-handed, what could happen is the dinghy could start moving like this, because it's the boom that's moving as well. So we stop that by these jammers and also the pulley blocks. So this 5mm inox is one of my additions, and while we're here you can probably see that this is the Rockner Vulcan, and just above it I've reinforced the bowsprit with box steel. But this basically adds some protection from debris in the water, and it also, because this anchor is so big, it protects the bow and the fiberglass from the swinging anchor that might happen when you're pulling it up. Elbe thinks she's going for a walk. While I'm here as well, and Elbe's inspecting the hulls, you can see the antifoul, and this is quite a high copper content, and I deliberately chose red because it has more copper content in it. But the antifoul from Hempel, this one is pretty good. I think it's this one's a non-ablative antifoul. It's meant to be, but we're stationary in a place where there's a lot of wildlife. There's freshwater meets seawater, and a great place for oysters. There's lots of beautiful natural oysters here, lots of clams and all those nice shellfish. That means that the hulls get fouled quite quickly. I have to say it's doing a pretty good job, but it also means I've got to clean the air conditioning more often. So we're in between the two hulls here now, and I'm just going to move the dinghy a little bit closer so you can see that there's quite a big shield there, and that is the gas outlet for the one of the heads in the, that's the starboard hull, but it's the same on the other side. And basically I've added this shield, and that stops a vacuum happening which jams gases, and you can actually explode your holding tanks. So good idea, put one of those shields on, job done.
Thank you for watching. So leave your comment, your like and subscribe, don't forget.